Hey everybody, time for the Surf and Turf Show. Hey everybody. Hey, good morning, Adam. You look a little tired, my friend. What's up?
Yes. The oldest daughter went to a Megan Moroney concert last night, so I did not know. I still don't really know who Megan Moroney is, but my daughter wanted to go to the concert, so I had to stay up to make sure that she exfiltrated uh, properly from the environment.
Is Megan Moroney? So your daughter's what, like teenager? 15,
Yeah,
16, 12,
16, yeah, almost 17.
16, almost 17. So Megan Moroney, positive influence in the universe, negative influence in the, what's your take?
So it's I literally do not have enough information to even tell you that because I don't know what she looks like. I've never heard a song. I've just heard her name, so I can't even say yes or no.
But you went to the concert. What did you
No,
like sit
no,
in the
no.
parking
I
lot?
did no. I had to. I couldn't go to the concert. I had to just pick her up at a girlfriend's house. So that was my role. But thankfully, I avoided just the horrendous, like hellish traffic.
I can only imagine, man. That that sounds about right. So let's see. So your morning starts then. You do that. You go in. What time did you get in last night?
So yeah, so we get in just after midnight, go to bed, and then this morning I wake up seeing my daughter with Starbucks, and she's like, "Oh, so and so wanted me to bring her Starbucks," which already is like very triggering for me. Like the idea that like you would have Starbucks delivered in school fills me with a sort of rage, like all out of proportion to like what it is. Like I'm like,
Wait. What? I'm
why?
missing something. What's this? What is this trend? Help me understand this. Like she
So
went and
it's
bought a
just
cup of
like
coffee and
yes. Well, no. So they'll go and like they'll DoorDash like Starbucks to the high school, and that's like a thing. And so my wife and I have always been like, no, that's not happening. But now that she's like, she's got her own mobility, and she's got her own agency, she's like, she goes and gets Starbucks. I'm already like not happy about that. And then she's like, hey, I can't. Your truck won't start. I can't get the key out of the ignition. So I'm like,
are you in
okay,
bed at this point? Are you still
no, so,
asleep and this is
no,
happening?
no,
Like
no,
where?
no. I literally like just woken up. So then I'm like, okay, I go down. I'm like messing with it. I can't figure it out either. So then I get my wife to give a ride to school, and then right after they leave, I'm like, oh, it won't start because it's in drive. So I put it in park. It starts right up. Turn it off. It's good.
So like she
But
drove the car to the driveway and then turned the keys off and then
yes,
like would just that
yes.
was it. That was the end of it. Like I mean,
Yes, and it is. Listen. I mean, I'm not going to say I've never done that before, but like, it's definitely, um, it's kind of like a teenage move. I would say, like, she's just in a hurry. She's like, boom, go. You know.
sure.
So
Flustered, right? Flustered. It's a lot to handle the
yeah,
morning after a Mahoney concert, where you're just like, I just woke up. I just dealt with some shit last night I probably don't want to deal with. And now you broke my truck. I'm like, how is this? What kind
yeah.
of day is this?
It's. I've already mourned like the loss of my truck. I'm like, it's gonna be. It's gone from me. It's already dead.
Oh man, that is it is, it's sad, right? It's an unfortunate part of teenagers turning 16. One, obviously your insurance goes through the roof. And, I can't even be mad at the insurance company because I'm like, okay, if I was playing the odds,
Right.
they're probably going to crash this car. But meanwhile, you are
Yeah.
like, well, I have a car that works. It's nice. I like my car. You're going to destroy it. You're going to kill my car. And then I'm going to have to replace it.
Yep. And so, I mean, that's just, that's part of the parenting journey. I'm on like a new phase of the journey. So it's very exciting.
You are. That is a true statement. That is 100% true. And then eventually they'll leave home and then you get the post leave home problems. Although if we're being
Oh,
honest, like I haven't really had
yes.
to experience those. My experience with that has been very positive so far, but we'll see. Now wait, I
Good.
got to circle back. What does a door dashed Starbucks cost? Like what's that? What's that like me as the consumer when I say I want
So,
DoorDash to bring me Starbucks?
I,
What's that
I
guy
mean,
run me?
I would never put myself forward as like an exemplar of financial management. So I'm glad that you are, but when I look at like the door, like it's literally like, so let's say the Starbucks is like, I don't, we'll say it's like $6. I don't know because I don't buy those kinds of drinks. Let's say it's $6. Then it's probably you're paying like another like at least four or five to like have it delivered with all like the taxes and the tip and everything. So it's just an awful thing that like kids today just do. And I don't know. I think my grandparents would literally roll over in their graves if they knew that this was going on.
They're just like double digit. It's the opposite of every efficiency model that was developed and like peaked in the 20th century. You're like, all right, we got to find a way to get a consumer his goods cheaply. Like, we got to find a way to get that coffee down to like, 39 cents or whatever it was at Dunkin' Donuts when we were growing up. And now we've taken it the opposite. We're like, no, no efficiency.
Yeah.
Each cup will be delivered by hand to
Yeah.
one person in a
Well,
gas
yeah.
guzzling car. Like, it's so good. It's so amazing to
Yeah.
me that
And
that's
then
that's where consumerism led us.
And then not to mention we're creating like a whole class of jobs to service this that are like very precarious. They don't pay very well. And it's like we're creating worse jobs for people.
It's like a sonic car hop, like this idea that you could be a car hop, but across the whole city to deliver just whatever people want. It's funny actually. I read a lot on like the side hustle economy, like the idea that people now try to staple together basically a series of jobs like that to put together some kind of functional lifestyle. And I see it pitched both ways. I see people talk about how liberating it is because you're in control and you could pick this and pick that, but I see the other side too. Like, it's not exactly secure employment. So I'm not sure. I guess the jury's out for me on whether or not.
Yeah. So yeah, I never want to begrudge somebody like, this is what they're choosing to do to support their family and
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
like much respect. But at the same time, like when I look at the system, I'm like, why are we creating this job class that's so um poorly compensated and then just like it's just precarious and I don't know. It's a symptom of the illness of our age, I would say.
That's probably true. Although, I mean, I don't know how conspiratorial DoorDash in particular is because really it's just playing off people's laziness. Like, not that long ago, it just didn't exist. And I'm not sure that any like big
Oh,
corporation really kind of strong armed that poorly paying kind of nebulous job into existence. It was mostly just people were too lazy to go get coffee. So like, can I pay
yes.
for somebody to drive me a cup of coffee?
Well,
Basically, I'm paying you $5 to do what I could just do.
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So it is like this is a free market, quote unquote, and so there is a market for this service. So
Yeah.
we can't deny that, but I think it's definitely being just like online gambling. It's being like encouraged, and we're like, I don't know if this is like the healthiest behavior to be encouraging.
Yeah, that's it. I think there's a difference between kind of accepting that you're the modern pizza delivery guy and like, as what I got to do, man, because I'm stepping my way into a better thing. And and kind of driving it is like, this is the state, this is what you're shooting for. You want that kind of freedom and liberation in your economic prospects. So yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, the messaging on it is probably not super helpful, but again, I would never take away from somebody who's trying to get out there and hustle a little bit of cash. I mean, that's good. That's what America was built on.
Yes, yeah. I mean, and I always go back and forth in my head. Like, am I being like Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino? Get off my lawn about this new thing, or is it just a thing that happens now and everybody should just accept it, or does it represent like a degradation of things? So I tend to think it's more on the degradation side, but maybe it's just I'm getting old and crotchety, and I'm like the kids today they're so wasteful.
I think we've hit you on a good day to be old and crotchety. Where you're like, I woke up after this god awful experience and my car is broken and
Uh,
my daughter is bringing me double digit Starbucks, except it's not even for me.
yeah,
It's for somebody that doesn't live in my house. And I'm like, yeah, it's a
yeah,
good curmudgeonly sort of day. But actually,
it
I
is.
don't know. I guess I could see both sides of it. But on the whole, I'm a big supply and demand guy. Like, hey, man, if there's demand and somebody's
Mhm.
willing to do it and you're willing to pay for it, I don't think it's necessarily the healthiest thing that a person could want to do with their money. Like, but if you're willing to pay me to do it and it's worth my time, then hey, can't argue with that.
Yes, and so I think everybody comes down on the continuum between individual choices and then like what's good for the community. Everybody is somewhere like on that line, right? And so libertarians definitely they're more like, yeah, hey, like I don't need a sign that says the bridge is out. Like I got eyes. Like I'll go like I'll slow down if the bridge is out. I'll stop. But then other people, so you go back and forth with it, and yes, I think individual agency is important in a financial system, but I think we have like titanic forces shaping incentives in ways that we may not totally understand, and that's where I think I have an issue with that sort of thing.
No, that's true. It's the background. It's like, is it a free market or is it actually just kind of got the trappings of a free market? But actually, it's so
Hmm.
manipulated that it's not really all that free anyway. And you're right, right? So that undermines whatever kind of moral value there is. And hey, I'm just getting out there and being scrappy. If I'm actually being kind of manipulated and tricked into this by a series of folks who were actually interested in me just kind of staying at the bottom and never making any progress. So yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, especially like, the jobs going away with like benefits, and it's like, oh, you're just a contractor, so like technically you're not even an employee, so you're not
Mhm.
eligible for like all these other protections. And so there's that whole side of it. So yeah, it's cast as like empowerment, oh, you control your own schedule, but is it really all that it's played up to be?
It To me, it depends. It depends, right? At the very bottom, I think frankly, mostly it's mostly exploitive. Although there are these weird niches. Again, DoorDash is a weird one because I wouldn't say it's exploitive because it's not really, I think, being pushed, right? I mean, again, I don't think Starbucks they're happy it exists, but Starbucks isn't kind of like cutting employees. There wasn't this huge like corporate delivery model that is being cut by DoorDash, except maybe in the pizza industry. But the pizza delivery guy was never all that well paid anyway. He probably isn't making any less money, and so that one's a little weird. But I agree. In general, there is a tendency toward well, if I don't have to pay somebody to do it full time and I can contract it out and convince that person that that's actually a better deal for them, that feels a little exploitive, right? That feels like just a corporation looking to maximize profit kind of at somebody's expense. But DoorDash is a weird one. It's a weird kind of hole in that argument.
Yeah, yeah. So again, yeah, I don't want to like if people are voluntarily doing it, but I also think maybe they don't have access to other better opportunities, so they're kind of settling on that as like, hey, I could do this while my kids at soccer practice, or whatever it is. I'll do it in like the odd hours. So I don't know, man. Yeah, it just doesn't seem like it's a trend in a positive direction for humanity.
No, I agree with you completely. And the fact that the demand is there is what's kind of ridiculous to me. It's almost like a silly
Yeah,
economic thing. I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm never pushing the lazy button too. I'm like, I just don't feel like driving 6 blocks. I'm gonna order some food to come here. But it gets a little ridiculous when you take it to, I guess, a certain
yeah.
extreme. You're like,
Like you're
why does this
DoorDashing
exist?
like a hot pretzel.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, this just seems a little like, all right, I get it's good that we have these opportunities for people to do these services, but it's kind of dumb that this service exists, right? It's like it kind of speaks poorly of society that this demand is there. Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But what can we do? But honestly, in the grand scheme of things, whether or not DoorDash is a morally positive thing is pretty small potatoes on a day like today. I mean, we've got like active duty Marines on the ground in LA. We got I think maybe Israel at war with Iran now like today. I look at the news and I try not to look at the news, right? I'm a big advocate of less information about things you can't control is actually a positive thing. But on a day like this, it's hard to remember. It's hard to remember, like, hey, take a deep breath. You can't control it. You can't do anything about it. Let's just slow down and focus inward. I don't know. Am I way off on that? Is that head in the sand?
No, well, so no, so I think you've got like different impulses, right? Like, so the one impulse is like being an informed citizen, understand what's going on, but that can be taken to an extreme where you're like getting, you've got updates set up on your phone that's distracting you. You're getting like a breaking news thing. And I always try to like, with my wife and my mom, I'm always like trying to turn them off because I'm like, you got like, this is not like, if a nuclear bomb goes off, like that's something I want to know about, but like, short of that, like I don't need to be interrupted. So and then there is much more noise rather than signal in like the day-to-day news cycle. So I think you're absolutely right that in general, staying out of that game, you're going to get a lot more done with your life, not obsessing and fixating on the petty dramas of the day. But yes, when there's large events happening, then we need to look at them, examine them, see what's going on, and then and try to make sense of them.
Yeah, that is a tough balance. And we talked about it We talked about it with leadership last week a bit when we were trying to talk about what's the balance between knowing how much information you need to make a decision and then being able to be decisive in spite of the fact that you could, or despite the fact that you could have more information. Like, all right, we got to cut the information flow. I got everything I need. Let's go ahead and act. And a lot of the news cycle stuff seems that way to me too, right? In my own life, okay, there are things that happen that will trigger me to make a decision and change what I'm going to do. Whether it's, let's say, I don't know, taking some kind of action in the market, or on the kind of high end, calling my congressman, telling my kids, calling my family, calling somebody I know that's in that region to see if they're okay. But honestly, one, those events are fairly rare and it's kind of hard to miss them. Like, I don't know, if I try not to watch the news, I will still learn about those things. And it's very easy to then take an important thing. I mean, to your point, you're like, well, I want alerts on things that are important, but not on things that aren't important. The trouble is the news can, I think, make an important thing become 96 hours of constant updates. Like, in theory, yes, this is a very important thing, but how much do I really need to know about it to make a decision? Like, okay, Iran bombed Israel, or the other way. Israel bombed Iran, destroy that nuclear program. Okay, that thing's been brewing for a while. Kind of known maybe that was going to happen for a bit. It finally happened. I'm not happy that it happened, not because I don't think, Israel has a right to defend itself against Iran. It's just in general, destabilization maybe isn't what I was looking for in the world today. But that's just my perspective on it, right? But past that initial opinion of like, I'm happy with it, I'm not happy with it, I could refine it a little. What more is there to know? How many more stories could I read about it and really get anything else that's going to help with my life? Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, and you're absolutely right to hit on, like, your span of control, like what exactly can you influence, and then is it, does that matter right now? And I think a lot of times humans have a mismatch between like what we focus on and like what we can impact. And I think it's natural with technology and with kind of this like globalized, we're trying to become this cosmopolitan world. You need to be educated on all these big issues. But besides, like, unless you're volunteering for an organization, you're donating money, like, you're doing something concretely to address some sort of issue, then, yeah, like you don't have to obsess over it. And I think you're just going to like tie yourself up in knots, by obsessing over these things.
Exactly. And I think it's important. It's important to remember too that much of the tying yourself up in knots that goes on is being driven, right? And I don't think that's even conspiratorial. Like, that's not, I think, anything anybody would disagree with, because it's designed to make you unhappy. It's designed to provoke a response, whether it's because a couple more clicks gets them more money, or because whoever is paying for the story to be created wants you to feel a certain kind of emotion based on the kind of world situation they're going to change. And so it's it's like a principle of psychological operations in the military. And again, that knowledge has percolated out into the world, and it's just hard to deny that that's going on with the news most of the time. And so you have to just recognize that. You have to recognize that it's designed to provoke a reaction and, adjust your intake accordingly.
Yeah, so I used to listen to Tristan Harris. He's got the Center for Humane Technology. He's got a podcast called Your Undivided Attention that I really love, about, he's the guy that did the Social Dilemma documentary, but he talks about like these social media companies have teams of PhDs that are just sitting there like, how do we make people say, keep their, time on site, right, is the big metric. How do we keep their time on site high? How do we keep their eyeballs on our platform? And, what they've realized is that, fear and anger percolate through a social ecosystem better than, good vibes. And it's the same thing with mainstream media, right? Like, if it bleeds, it leads. And they are, whether it's MSNBC or whether it's Fox, they are incentivized. It's like scratching poison ivy, right? Like, so when, like, oh, when I hear about the libs are so bad, or like the conservatives are so bad, it makes me feel good because it's like it's justifying my internal priors. So, oh, look what the dumb libs did today. Oh, look at what these idiot MAGA people did today, right? Like, it makes me feel good. And that's how the business model is. And so, like, people need to like understand that and break out of it.
Yeah, I think the scratching poison ivy is an excellent analogy, right? Because does it make it better when you scratch poison ivy? Like, for about 1 second, right? And then,
Yeah.
of course, it makes it far worse in the future. But it's not
Yeah.
that different than like a drug dealer's business model, right? You get people hooked,
Yes.
and then they want to take a little more because a little bit gives you a little bit of happiness, but never as happy as you were before, and you're always kind of chasing the dragon, so to speak. And I just see it, and you're like, you have to recognize it. It doesn't mean again you should be
Yeah.
the ostrich that never looks at anything, but recognize what
Right.
is like neurochemically being done to you, and push back against it. Right? Push back against it. Like refuse to consume.
Yeah, and it is like, I've got a lot of liberal friends, I've got a lot of conservative friends, and it's very interesting to see for me to like try to like inhabit their worldviews, like each of them. Like I'll try to like, okay, what is it like from your perspective? And it's, if you're a liberal, like you feel like we're under like the Weimar Republic right now. And if you're a conservative, you feel like you're finally like we've got somebody to stand up for this very like entrenched deep state bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And he's finally doing what like voters, asked him to do. So it's like you have these two completely like opposite realities existing in this nation at the same time.
Yeah, and it's super dangerous. So I read a lot on the French and the Russian revolutions. So both huge historical topics of interest to me. I've read a ton on them. The trouble with both of those revolutions, they look like truly bottom up movements, right? And there's a bottom up component to them, but in reality, a lot of what you saw was people around the periphery of the seat of power being angry at the seat of power for whatever reason, whether it's because you thought he was a shitty king or because you thought the czar was weak or because you just wanted to strengthen your position. And so the way they achieve that power in that system is to play directly to people, to fire the people up against their adversaries, and to start creating these super inflammatory narratives that'll galvanize people and get them to take action, right? Huge portion of both revolutions. Get people to take action, get people to move against my political enemies. The trouble is in both cases, it worked. But once it works and you get people that fired up and you kick over all of the kind of struts that support society. You kick all that stuff out of the way and you burn it all down. And you're like, you execute the king. Let's kill the king. Let's kill the queen. Let's kill the czar. All right, we did it. Well, now we could turn it all off, right? Let's just tap it all back down. It's good. Like, no, no, no. Now you got that machine running. Like now, all of the people, like Marat, Robespierre, Danton, I think my French is terrible. All those dudes got executed too, right? You're like those were the dudes that instigated it, and they're the ones that then got the guillotine next, and then the next echelon, and the next echelon. And so before you know it, you've completely lost control of the situation. And in both cases, what happened? Were we happy with the overall outcomes of those situations? Like, did we achieve egalitarian paradise in either the Soviet Union or post-revolution France? I think one, we generated an emperor who declared general war on the continent, and the other one, we created an enormous police state that took over most of Eastern Europe before it collapsed. Right. So I, I want people to be cautious before they consume this really toxic substance that gets them so mad. Because once you get mad enough and once you actually achieve the thing that everybody wants you to achieve, it's going to be bad for everybody. It's going to be really terrible, probably worse than where you were before.
Yes, I think there's an expression like the revolution eats its children. I'm not sure exactly who said that, but so I want to talk about two authors real quick to kind of I think illustrate what we're talking about here. So the first one is obviously Peter Turchin. We've talked about him a lot. He, you know, I have seen I have seen political scientists that like they criticize his theory, like they're like this is not for this that and the other, like Yasha Monk's a big critic, doesn't find his theory credible, but I think when you look at what he discusses and he wrote Ages of Discord, I don't know 15-20 years ago, and he predicted the 2020s, like literally you can't really, I don't think you can really see it. He's got like literally a chart on the front of the cover that points to the 2020s as like, yo, this is going to be like a sporty area. So like, and he, so he wrote all this stuff, years before looking at broad systemic factors. But I think, the one that's key for what you're talking about is the elite overproduction. So we have like too many elites that are trying to make moves. There's not enough positions of power for them, for status. So it's like musical chairs and there's too many people and there's not enough chairs. And so that's where you see like a lot of what is going on today with with the president's movements and then the movements in the Democratic Party. Like there's too many elites vying for control of the republic, and then you see that play out amongst the narratives that they're stirring up in the people. And then the other one, fantasy, the subgenre grimdark, which is basically like kind of like a dark Game of Thrones. But one of my favorite fantasy authors, Joe Abercrombie, he just wrote a series called, I don't know what the series is. Oh yeah, The Age of Madness. And basically what he does is he takes like a fantasy world, he starts to bring it up to like almost like an industrial revolution, and he starts to show all the dislocations, children dying in a factory fire, people getting uprooted off their land. But there is like a revolution in those books, and he shows you just graphically how awful it gets, and how it starts with like such high-minded aspirations, and it just and nobody wins in that thing. Nobody wins. It is just bad for everybody. So I think it's important to remember that as we go into these next few years.
I really, more than anything else, want people to remember that. I mean, both of us lived through, a large degree of kind of war-torn time. Um, and it's just not good, right? I mean, I was more of a libertarian when I was younger. Going to Haiti kind of made me shy away from it. Like, okay, well, that's libertarian. Yeah, I mean, that's where libertarianism can go, right? You're like, that's not what you actually want. A little structure's good. But to that point, like once you kind of tear it all down, like it's not going to be an egalitarian paradise, and it's not going to be anything based on principles, not for a long time. It's going to shake out, and it's going to be super might makes righty, and it's going to be bad for everybody. And so to me, the big lesson though, the big lesson looking at all that and looking forward at it is, all of the various douchebags who are trying to push this sort of narrative, all of those people who don't have a seat at musical chairs and are stomping their foot and irritated about it, like their ability to achieve those ends and to cause this hellishness that's going to also consume them is only it is limited by people's willingness to support it, right? It's willingness by people's willingness to hate the other people in the planet, to get themselves fired up, to start, taking the law into their own hands. It's limited by that. And so it can only get so destructive if people just tone it down, look left and right at your neighbors and say, most of the people I'm around are actually all right. Maybe I should just get off the internet, go hang out with some folks that I like to hang out with, and stop worrying so much about all of these things, because it's going to get to a point when you can't stop it anymore.
Yes. Well, and then so both coalitions have components that have been, what Turchin calls immiseration. Like, so their standard of living is declining. So, both conservative and liberal constituencies have like blocks that are not served by our modern economy. Going back to the DoorDash thing, like that's a prime example. Like, so you've got elements in both that are living precarious lives. So you've got like ready people that are like, they're ready to go because they're like, this system's not working for me. I want something better. And I mean, their desires are like a better life for themselves and their children. But they're going to be guided towards, actions that are going to be long lasting, and it's going to be tough for the entire country if we go down that road.
Yeah, and the system's got. I mean, again, we've talked some of this before, but the system's got to be able to kind of integrate those people. But it has to recognize the need to do so. They recognize the need to not demonize, but to say, hey, whatever you believe, like me, love me, hate me, we got to find a way to get you to come play. Because if you're not playing, if you're on the outskirts, then you're super susceptible to that kind of narrative, and you're susceptible to the kind of, calls to action that get people out throwing bricks at other people for what? Like, is that a good paying job? Is throwing bricks going to do anything long term? Like, if you're that frustrated with the system, I totally get it. At a certain point, people like they got nothing to lose. The system has to make sure that there aren't people with nothing to lose, right? That's just, I think, the intelligent way to govern. And the trouble is when you get people who are in the system who are actually working against the system. Like again, these kind of tier two, asshats that are kind of just pushing things over to try and rock it for personal gain. Like, don't play ball. Don't listen to them. They're not looking out for you. They're really not. On either side. Those people are not looking out for any of us. They are looking out for themselves. Like I feel confident saying that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. I think people struggle to make sense of like what's happening and then what they should do. Like, should they, because I think sometimes people think just sitting here and commenting online is not enough. Like, I need to go out and like take action. But then it's like, what kind of action? What's going on? And what are the ramifications of those actions?
I'll do you one better. I'll say that sitting there and commenting online is too much. It's not enough. It's entirely too much. Don't. Why? What is it going to do? Why sit there?
Yeah.
Why sit there in this kind of like weird news cycle masturbation world where you just get madder and madder and feel like you're somehow achieving something by enraging yourself and others? Like, stop. Let it
Mhm.
go. Stop being mad about it. Go do something else. Even if we're in a bad situation, I think we can always work internally in our space to better it. And certainly sitting there and taking digital heroin's not going to do that. It's going to be the opposite. And it's going to make it worse for everyone else as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I really think people just need to vote. I think that's like if they have that much of a problem with it, then they need to vote. But like right now, we have a government that was elected, and they are executing the policies that they campaigned on. So, you know, to me, they need to be able to execute those policies, and we have a court system that will adjudicate the legality of those policies. And I am not a lawyer, so I will defer to courts to decide like what's legal or not. But um, you know, the president was elected in an election that was definitive by my look, so he should be able to like um, try to enforce what he campaigned on.
Yeah, and it's kind of the bad side that people don't like about democracy is like, hey, the other team sometimes gets a turn driving the car. You're like, this sucks. I hate it when they're driving the car. We always drive the wrong way. We hit all the bumps. We stop the places I don't want. We never stop when I got to take a leak. It just sucks having the other team drive the car. They're jerks. But the good side of it is now, hey, guess what? In 3 years, you get to take a swing at taking the car
Mm,
back, right? It's it's when I think people are convinced that that doesn't work anymore. When people are convinced that like actually there's no ability to vote because when you vote it doesn't matter because they're just kind of picking their winners. That people start to get extra frustrated with it. But I hope people don't give up. Don't give up on the system. Like the system,
yeah,
we got to do our
I,
best to make it better because the other
I,
systems aren't going to be better.
yeah, and I think, and we are living in such a time of like collapse of sense making capabilities. So you know, we had all the allegations of this election in 2020 was fake. This it was rigged. This, that, and the other, and you know plenty of Democrats were like, that's not credible. Biden clearly won. But now what I'm starting to hear is, oh, Elon rigged the election. And that to me is like, that's another dangerous road to go on to. Just like, if we're going to be critical of Trump's big lie and say like, oh, hey, that was a fair election in 2020, we need to extend the same charity to the 2024 election. And I think now we're starting to see that like that talk come out based on some of the things that Elon has said.
And we don't do the thing where okay, I hated it when the other guy did it, but now I also need to hate it when my guy did it. Like we don't do that anymore, right? Like I don't know if it's a
Right.
short memory thing. I don't know if it's like the news cycle overwhelms people's ability to remember more than like a year or 2 years, but I feel like
Mhm.
people just kind of dump that. It's like all RAM, no hard drive anymore. Like, bro, you rebooted the
Yeah.
computer. Did you forget what happened just a few years ago? Like, it
Yeah.
seems sometimes that we all get stuck in that. I mean, you see it all the time. Like everybody's upset about book burning, but I think I remember the same book burning comments like 3 years ago, and I think I remember them another 3 years before that, where everybody's always mad about the other side's, infringing on our freedom of speech and doing this and that. And I mean, the reality is probably all the sides are doing it, and probably we should always be mad at all of them doing it, right? But it seems that we're very quick to forgive our side and very quick to demonize the other, and it's just not good. It's not constructive.
No, and that's where like, so organizations like Fire are in there to, they're like free speech organizations. I think it's like Foundation for Individual Rights of Expression, something like that. But basically Fire has taken up the free speech mantle, and they're trying to defend left and right ability to exercise speech. And I think we're seeing that, we're seeing the current administration infringe on speech. We've seen past, Democratic administrations infringe on speech. And then in Europe, we're seeing people get arrested, for social media posts. So it's definitely like a tough time for speech in the world.
It is. It is a tough time. I mean, ultimately, everybody wants free speech, but nobody wants everybody else to have free speech, right? Like, I want free speech, but that guy shouldn't be able to say that. Like, that ends up, people say that with a straight face. You're like,
Right.
that doesn't actually make sense, man. Like, free speech means everybody can say whatever he wants, can say whatever the hell you want. And you can, sticks and stones may break my bones kind of thing. It doesn't have to bother you. In fact, you could just not listen. You can go away. You can ignore that person. But I think the news doesn't want us to ignore those people, right? They want us to respond. They want us to get mad. They want us to
Yes.
fight to
And
silence each other.
and if you look at I've seen various nonprofit examinations of the political blocks in the country. You have like you have like an 8% on either side that are like incredibly extreme in their views, and then social media allows them to amplify themselves and seem much larger than they really are, and then they will also try to enforce their own side and police their own side to make sure that they're singing off the same sheet of music, and what that does is then like kind of radicalize each side rather than like realize, like you said, like look around and be like, yeah, my neighbors like are just regular people just like me. You develop this like caricatured view of the other, and you think that they're much more different than they really are.
That's right. You want to force, if you were in charge of this, you would want to force polarization because two polarized groups are easier to manage and you can actually get action out of a polarized group. So, um, I guess let's step back into recent history. So, I was a special forces guy, right? So, our primary mission is unconventional warfare. What is unconventional warfare? Unconventional warfare is going into a country that we do not, agree with politically, and you work with the disenfranchised members of that country to overthrow the government of that country. That is the special forces mission, right? You see, pick a country and you will see where this has happened. So a key part of unconventional warfare, though, is getting the support of the population, right? You have to be able to get the people to support you because if you're this guerrilla force that's out in the jungles of, Vietnam or Colombia, you can't do much. You can't do much out there. There's no people out there. There's no power out there. Nobody cares if you exist. So you have to get people to kind of help you because the people are going to hide you. People are going to provide you with supplies. The people are going to help. They're going to provide you recruiting. They're going to be the people who generate the kind of military power that you need to then overthrow a country. And so I bring this up because one of the key tenets of UW, unconventional warfare, is understanding how to manipulate the population, right? That same arc you talk about with the 8% on either end, 8% are always going to think this, 8% this, and everybody else is kind of on a bell curve in the middle. That's exactly the model we use when we look at insurgency and population. You're like, all right, so 8% of the people are probably going to take my cause automatically. I can find 8% of the people who will be diehard supporters. 8% are going to be radically opposed to me no matter what. My key as the guy who's looking to manipulate this situation to achieve the overthrow that I'm looking for is to move as many people as far in my direction as I can and to take as many people from the other side as I can, right? Oh, Gordon McCormick, like an MPS, had a
Ah,
really well thought out. You remember, but he
yes.
had a really well
Oh
thought
yeah.
out strategy on this. He really well thought out scientifically how you get after this, and you get after it by targeting the people. But what do you target them with? You target them with messaging, right? You target them with messaging to bring them to your side of the table, and you try to push them over to the side so that they hate the other side, and so that they're willing to do anything for your side. And that's like scientific, mechanical military business right there. That is 100% a strategy to achieve things. And you look around, you're like, it looks like what's happening. And so
Right.
I can't help but feel that it's by design, but I also can't help but feel like, come on, folks, look around. This is being done to you on both sides. Stop. Don't buy in. If you don't buy in, the 8% can do whatever the hell they want on the margins and be jerks, and nobody will like them on either side. But the more we kind of normalize that, the worse it's going to be.
Yeah, and we don't want to get conspiratorial. So just as you said, like you know, the major media companies, the social media companies, they're just incentivized to do, this to the population by their business model. The same thing, we've got, we are fighting, right? Like we do have a disagreement in this country over like how we should be and how we should move forward. But then we have, outside entities, like a China, like a Russia, that could just pour gasoline, on the fire. And particularly like, China, particularly like we have given the minds of our children over to like one of our main adversaries in the form of TikTok, and they can literally tweak the algorithm from Beijing to like to kind of like alter perceptions. And we could get into like fifth generation warfare, all this thing, like, but like basically they can accelerate existing grievances and really kind of make them, exacerbate them much worse than they really are.
I mean, Chinese Dan, Chinese guy who spent his career being a feeder of malcontents in the professional capacity. Chinese Dan is having a great time with the United
Mhm.
States right now. And so is Russian Dan. And so is all of the, whatever corporation. Again, you don't have to get too conspiratorial to imagine that everybody's looking to set the conditions for their own benefit. And setting that conditions means weakening the U.S. power. And the best way to weaken the U.S.'s power is to make the U.S. hate itself so that it's less capable of projecting power. Like, no conspiracy there. That's just like straight
Right.
up geopolitics. And so don't don't do it. It's everybody can win.
Mhm.
Everybody can succeed. Just don't take the bait. It's easy. Fish wouldn't get caught if fish doesn't bite the hook. Go eat something else, right? Go eat something else. And everybody has that ability. Every one of us has the ability to not show up, to not do it. But man,
Yeah.
it's so
uh,
pleasant to take the bait.
And so we have like, in the military, we talk about, operations and intelligence are kind of like the yin yang that are kind of moving things forward. And people will be like, oh, it's, intelligence drives operations. And people are like, operations drives intelligence. Well, with our political leadership, you have like the population and then you have the politicians, and they exist in this like reciprocal relationship. So, the politicians are just going to try to give the people what they want, like the red meat. They're going to go after the other side. They're going to do all these like attention grabbing things. And as long as the population resonates and responds to that, they're going to keep doing that sort of thing. But if us as the population of voters can say like, hey, listen, man, like, I don't like this. I don't like it when you showboat and you do all this stuff. Like, I want you to get in there. I want you to move your family to Washington, and I want you to freaking have Sunday picnics with the other side. I want you to go drink whiskey with like your counterparts. Like, that's what we want. And until we do that, we're going to keep getting this like, this adversarial, WWE stuff going on.
Yep. Yep, that's right. Because right now people want drama more than they want reasonable solutions. And if they didn't, then we wouldn't be voting the way we're voting so consistently, right? Like if people didn't want that, the people would stop feeding it to them. That's our ability. Our ability as the population of democracy is to get out there and pick reasonable people who behave and think about like we do and want to get together and solve problems. It doesn't mean that you don't think that you would like the 51 or the 52% of that solution to be in more in your favor. Like, I kind of like it more this way than that way. Like, honestly, to me, that's like ideal democracy is when we're roughly both on kind of we agree on like 80% of issues and we're going to squabble around like the 20% around the margins. Like I felt we were closer to that kind of, like in our early youth and probably before that than we are now. But to me, that's kind of the ideal. It gives you the ability to kind of a sense of a win, a little bit of a sense of a loss, but it keeps us all in that middle bell curve where we can look at the 8% on either side and be like, those are some wackos. Don't need those people in our lives. But now we're the other way. We're like, yeah, wackos driving the train. Like, guess what? The sort of people that are that galvanized and that fanatic about any sort of issue, probably not the sort of people who are concerned with making the world a place where everyone can live like happily and comfortably. Because those people are kind of, again, professional malcontents. Like, do you really want that sort of fanaticism to drive the train on either side? Even if it's your flavor of fanaticism, do you want that? Like, I think the answer is
Yeah.
no for the vast majority of people.
Yeah, it's definitely not healthy, and I think it goes back to, we've talked about the decline of religiosity. I'm not sure if it's like reversing now, or if we are still on a secular trend. But like when you don't have a space for the numinous and the divine in whatever way you manifest it, that energy, that focus is going to go somewhere else. You're going to infuse it into something else. And so you see it with, the, the excesses on the left and the right have become infused with a religious fervor. And when you make politics existential like that, that, that is just the recipe for, for more instability and violence.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. and it's nothing good. But we have the tools. We have the tools to fix the solution. Every one of us. And I think the best way you can do that, I mean, we've touched on it, but the best way to do that is tend to your own yard, right? Every one of us, myself included. And this is a little silly since we're talking heads on the internet and we're out here talking to people. We are the messaging people, right? Here we are messaging to people. But at least our message is, hey, calm down and take care of your own shit. You know, like, hey, if you don't like the way your life is, cool. Get out there and work your best in your space to kind of make that right. To me, I love. So we don't live in an HOA neighborhood. I don't know if you live in a neighborhood with an HOA, but to me, I, I love non-HOA neighborhoods. And the reason I love non-HOA neighborhoods is that you can take your yard however you want. There's a guy down the street that's got like 4 Winnebagos in his yard and like 3 old cars. You know what? Do I love that? Do I love that his house looks like that? I don't. But at the same time, like, I respect his ability to do that with his, like, hey man, cool. If that's what you want, that's what you want. And he respects the same for me. He might not like it that I go mow my yard twice and I got a tire swing in my yard. He's like, I hate seeing children play in the yard. He might hate that. Like, guess what? He doesn't get a vote. And it's cool. That's the way it works best. And if I saw that guy at the grocery store, we would not hate each other. I'd be like, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? The Winnebago's doing okay? Nah, they're not running. Oh, that's a shame. It's cool. Again, what's there to be so mad about? I don't care how he lives his life, and he shouldn't care about how I live mine. And I think if we could get into that space, take care of your own shit, manage your own business. Don't worry so much about what
Yeah.
the other people are doing, especially people across the country who have absolutely nothing to do with you. Like, take care. Spend 90% of your time taking care of the things that are closest to you. And I think be happier,
Yeah.
but also help diffuse the situation. Like the whole world will be better.
Well, yeah, and I think you point to a concept of grace that I think we're sorely missing, like, some grace in the world today, and then the concept of when I really enjoy looking at, like, religious traditions and seeing what commonalities they have. But I think what you're pointing at is, like, the love your neighbor. That's not like the neighbor that agrees with me. Like, that's the neighbor that, like, their
Yeah.
their like view is like total, like, they've got like a nose ring and they've got this and that, and like, and they got Winnebagos, and
They order
I don't
Starbucks on DoorDash, for God's sake. They order
yes,
Starbucks on DoorDash.
yes, those horrible door dashers. So, like, the idea of love your neighbor is like, oh, listen, man, like, we don't agree, like, on X, Y, and Z, but, like, I respect you, you do you, and I'll do me over here. And, like, we can kind of, like, come to a collective, like, correspondence with one another. And I think that is, kind of the intolerance, is fairly high right now.
No, I'd say we talk so much about building character in our kids and trying to build character in ourselves. But man, that is such a huge aspect of character, is being able to look at a thing that you're not wild about and recognize that it's not your business to fix it, because that other person has just as much agency as you do to choose the thing that they want that you do. Now, there's lines there, of course, and people always race to hyperbole. They're like, well, what if that person is burying nuclear waste in his yard and it's going to kill the whole neighborhood? Like, all right, well, no kidding. Then it's time to do something about it. And you get together with your other friends that don't bury nuclear waste in the yard and you go take care of it. And of course, but let's be, again, not the 8% here. We're not dealing with 8% situations on either side. We're dealing with what is that, 84% in the middle, which is the vast majority of everybody that you know in your life. And that, to me, nothing screams character like, okay, like, is it character when you loan your friend money? No, it's really not, right? Because he's your friend. You're going to do whatever. But is it character? Is it kind of a noble thing to loan somebody that you don't know money? Like, maybe it's foolish, you could argue, but it's certainly kind of a sign of a little more, like, nobility, like reaching up there to really try to help out somebody, even though you have no good reason to do so. And that kind of generosity, grace, like understanding of other people's perspectives, to me, that's such a huge part of character. Don't be so quick to hate everybody. But one of the best ways to do that is to interact with people as people, right? Because on the internet, nobody's a person. We're all just these faces. We're all just faces and memes and talking points and things we hate or things we love or things we love to hate. But real people aren't like that. And if the more time we spend interacting with real people, I think the easier it is to develop the kind of character that is so sorely lacking in the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an awareness that, like, everybody is just bumbling through life, like, doing the best they can, and, you know, there people have beliefs that are based on, yeah, if we want to be, like, uncharitable, we'll say, oh, you've been propagandized, you've been brainwashed. But in reality, like, people have beliefs based on the experiences they've had in their lives, like, quote unquote, their lived experience, and what, the people that they respect in their lives have instilled in them. So, before we start throwing, stones and judging other people, like, realize like they're coming from a completely different place than you are. So they may have drawn different conclusions about the world than you have. And like, we can respect that, like, that diversity of perspectives, and not, not censor them, and not, just, uh, try to minimize their perspective.
Yeah, 100%. And assume positive intent, right? In every situation, unless you have really good reason to assume a person does not have positive intent. I mean, there's situations we all know what they look like. Assume that the other person is also trying to, like, you know what? Trying to do my best. Trying to do my best to make the day go. Trying to do my best to do what's right by me and my family. Most people, I think, don't do that at other people's expense most of the time. Right? You're always going to get around the margins. Somebody that's kind of stiffing somebody else a little bit, like, I didn't tip you. I'm going to cheat the system and pay slightly less for my meal. There's always people, right? But most people are not that. Most people are just trying to do the best they can to make the world kind of go. And so when you bump into somebody and you have one of those moments like, the hell, man, what was that about? Like, take a second and just assume, like, you know what? Guy's probably not trying to be a dick. Guy was probably not trying to, cut me off or whatever else. It's fine. He's probably just trying to do the best he can today, just like all the rest of us. It's a stressful day. Maybe something went wrong. Maybe something, who knows? Who knows the situation? But we can assume that positive intent. And I think it helps mentally. It just helps you cool down that spike of rage that you immediately get when you see a thing you hate. You're like, oh yeah, well, you know what? Let's just take a second. It's probably not that big a deal.
Yeah, and so, and that goes back to something we learned out at Naval Postgraduate School. I remember learning about the fundamental attribution error, which is like, somebody cuts you off in traffic, you you blame the person. Like, you're like, he is a bad person. He cut me off. He's just like a jerk driver. And then when we do it, when we cut somebody off, we attribute it to, various situational factors. Like, we're like, well, listen, I'm running late. I got to pick my kid up. I had to cut you off. Sorry, man. Like, whatever. Like, it's just what it is. So like, we're not extending that same grace that we expect for ourselves to like other people we encounter in the world.
100%. 100%. That double standard is so rampant right now. And honestly, I'm not speaking about this like I'm a person that doesn't suffer from the same tendencies. Man, every
Mm-hmm.
single day something like
Yes,
that happens.
absolutely.
Like,
Yes.
absolutely 100% the same person who's like, man, what the hell was that about? What did you just do? Um,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that you can't take a minute. Just slow down, recognize it. Now, there's a few exceptions. For example, for me, a person who craps on the ground physically without burying it. So for me, there are a
Mm.
few lines that I can't cross. Maybe for you, it's ordering Starbucks. For me, there's a few
Yeah.
things that I'm like, nah, there's no excuse for that. Like a surface shitter in Army parlance. I- That's one. That maybe that's just a trigger for me. Maybe that's a
Mm.
failing in me that I can't recognize that maybe in that person's world, the time to cover up the poop with the dirt was just too that was just too long. Maybe that's a failing in me. But other than that, I try very hard to be accommodating of like, and just assume like, hey, whatever the reason was for this, it's probably something I'm not understanding. I should probably let it go. Right.
Okay, let me write that down, because I want to make sure that I don't never do that around you
I will never order
anymore.
DoorDash Starbucks around you,
Okay.
and you don't
Yeah.
shit on the
I
ground without
so
covering it up.
I am
Anyway,
always gonna, yes. So I'm gonna put my entrenching tool in my bag right now, so that I have it on me, so that
you could use your
I
foot,
don't
your hands. You could get a pile of leaves. Like, there's so many solutions. So when you just
yeah,
see that giant pile of crap sitting there,
yeah,
it's like you didn't even care. You didn't care about the world enough to cover that up.
yeah.
Like, and it's just a sore subject, man. It's a sore subject. But
That's true.
we all got our.
It's gonna add up if everybody starts doing that. Absolutely.
What would the world look like? What would the world look like? Maybe it would look like downtown San Francisco, based on the last time I was there, actually. But I guess you can't dig holes there, so I guess it's different sort of problems.
True. All right, so let's hit. We haven't talked about the other big thing that happened last night, which was Israel striking Iran.
We
So
did talk about it a
what?
little, but wait, what do you want to cover, man?
Yeah,
Where do we go with that guy?
I mean, I guess like what are your initial thoughts on that, and like kind of where, because I've thought about, like, I've got an essay in draft form that's like, I've had it in draft form for months. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it, and it's like, did World War III already start? Because like
Yeah.
I used to teach naval history. It was one of the classes I taught at the university, and like when you're covering, so basically we covered like naval history from, we actually went back to like, the Chinese and the Greeks, in, thousands of years ago, but then mainly it was focused on US naval history. But, one of the themes that I could see throughout teaching that course was like, you don't necessarily like always know that you're in the war. Like,
Mhm.
there's not like a nice, clean, sometimes there is, right? But like, sometimes you got a Pearl Harbor, but a lot of times you just kind of like ease into it. And so, when we look
Yeah.
at the conflicts in Ukraine and Israel, the Houthis, you've got all these small little brush fires, but like, do they aggregate into like a big world war? And we're just kind of like, we're easing our way into it now.
It's a tough question, right? I mean, like, is there the Archduke Franz Ferdinand moment? Is there that moment? Even then, was that moment recognized at the time? No, I don't think so, actually. I don't think that it was considered inevitable that World War One would start when that dude gets shot. I think it's more of a historian thing to say, well, when we look at the causes and like the mobilizations that it triggered, we would say that that's what precipitated it. But honestly, the conditions were set long before it, so it's a little arbitrary. Like you got to pick moments. Like there's people that would say that really World War One and World War Two are the same war, right? There are people that say that lull between the two wasn't really like calm enough to even say that there was a peace. Like no, that was just everybody setting the conditions for the next war. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. As far as Israel and Iran, so obviously some familiarity with the problem. I would say that Iran's nuclear capacity has been uh, moving towards execution or capability, where you want to say, for a long time. And there's been a lot of talk about slow it down, stop it, stop it, stop it, let's stop it. There's negotiations to stop it. Israel's like, you better stop it because we're not going to let them get it. And honestly, to be just totally upfront, I think those negotiations failed. I think that Iran did, in fact, achieve some kind of demonstrable nuclear capability. I think, and maybe not weaponized yet. I obviously don't have access to that information, nor would I say it on a podcast if I did. But um, I think that it hit a threshold where Israel was convinced that we're going to do this or Iran's going to do it to us. Because I think both of those parties believe that the other side will exterminate them if possible. Like, I don't think that that's really a far-fetched thing. So when I see Israel do it, I kind of get it. Like for them, it becomes existential. Like whether or not you think it was the right answer or the wrong answer, you're like, well, if they think Iran has a nuclear weapon and they know that Iran is going to continue to fund terrorist movements to attack Israel until Israel doesn't exist, then you're like, well, eventually they're going to arm a terrorist with a nuclear weapon. They're going to strike Tel Aviv and it's going to be into Israel, which is kind of what Iran wants. And so you're like, well, Israel, what are you going to do? Now, when you get past that level of analysis of like, I kind of get it, I see why it happened, it kind of makes logical sense from Israel's point of view, but it also kind of makes sense from Iran's point of view. Like, they're not going to give up their nuclear program if they're not convinced we have the teeth to make them do it, because once you have a nuclear weapon, geopolitics shows us that you have a unique strategic advantage, to negotiate, right? Like, even North Korea, as backward and silly as that place is, like, they got nukes. So there's only so many lines you could cross with them before they could blow something catastrophic up. And so if Iran is incentivized to get a bomb and Israel says that getting a bomb is absolutely a red line and you will never get a bomb because you would exterminate us, I'm like, where else do you think it's going to end up? How do we imagine it will
Yeah.
play out?
Yeah. It's definitely like the, you know, unstoppable force versus like immovable object, like argument.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
it's, I majored in Middle Eastern studies for my undergrad. And I remember like the first day of classes, like the head of the department was like, when I started studying the Middle East in like 1973, they told me today's a great time to be studying the Middle East. And then he was literally telling us that in like 2005, so it's just it's a region of the world that has had a low grade unresolvable conflict for a long, long time. And we can trace that back to like, we can blame the Brits for like screwing up all the maps, the area. But the bottom line is like, you have some irreconcilable differences and you have Iran funding, Hamas and Hezbollah so that they're part of, they're part of like a larger conflict. And so it is hard to look at, it's hard to look at what Israel's doing, in terms of the non-combatants that they're killing, in Gaza. It's hard to hold a lot of contradictions in your mind at the same time and see like, they are trying to make the situation safe so that October 7th never happens again. And so it's hard for me to like, so if we extrapolate out the people that died there, it's like 40,000 US citizens for like to be the equivalent to what they lost in that
The size
population.
kind of thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So like if you try to imagine what the US would do if there was a weekend where 40,000 Americans were murdered in graphically bloody fashion by some adversary, like what we would do to ensure that that never happened again. Um, I think we would, you remember 9/11, like you remember the rhetoric that we like that was bandied about by politicians then. So I'm trying to hold, different contradictions in my head and respect what Israel can do to defend themselves, and then also um, not not approve of like some of the actions that they're taking to achieve that goal. And that's hard to do. Like that's like normally like people are just going to split binary. Like you think that what they're doing is awful, or you fully support what they're doing, and so it's hard to try to find a middle perspective there. But I think this is just another manifestation of like the turbulent 20s, where the system is like not serving reality properly, whether we're talking about domestically or internationally. And then things like there's a disconnect between the system and reality. And basically, unfortunately, war is one of the mechanisms that humans use to bring a system into congruence with ground truth. And I think that's,
Yeah.
we're seeing that play out here.
It's tough, right? It's tough because you talk about war being the mechanism to bring a system into congruence, and to be upfront, I don't think that there's more equivalence between the two sides of this conflict. Like I do think that Israel has the stronger moral position. I'm not saying that all of their actions are always justified, but I believe that they fundamentally are working from self-defense, whereas the other side is fundamentally working from we need to exterminate Israel. So I just have that out there, but just take that off the table and just look at it from a pragmatic point of view. Like, how else is this going to play out except there's a war and one side wins? There's no ability, I think, to reconcile the two sides ever. And I don't think that's pessimistic. I think it's just the reality of the situation, right? Like, in large part, you would say that the Iranian regime blames its own problems internally on Israel's existence. I don't think that's uncommon in kind of the Islamic world that Israel gets used as kind of the fall guy for a lot of internal problems. I'm not saying that's even all the way wrong. Maybe it is, but either way, it doesn't matter. What you have two sides who are so diametrically opposed that you're never going to find what we're talking about in America. We're like, ignore the 8%. We got to get this bell curve. Like, no. In those two, there is no middle ground. One side says you can't exist. The other side says I'm going to
Yeah.
exist. What do you do? How could it play out
It,
except
yeah.
the way it is?
So that's where you get into like, the Godzilla meme, let them fight, because it's like, if you think about like the major international affairs theories for trying to understand how countries get along, right? Like you have the realist perspective, you've got the liberal institutionalist, and then you've got kind of like constructivism, like the kind of more like identity based view. And so, realists would say, give war a chance, right? Like you've got to let things play out and resolve themselves, and then as a result of that process, things will stabilize. So, like if you look at the human body, there's sometimes a war going on in your body just to achieve homeostasis, right? Like white blood cells killing, other germs and viruses. So, yeah, you're right. Like, we could try to like, we could send these two parties to therapy, right? Like they can try to resolve their differences in the
The
international
Mount David
forum.
Accords. Let's
But
go ahead and bring
yeah,
them
but
into Mount
like,
or Camp David.
but like
Yeah.
we've a lot of these things have been tried and tried and tried over the decades. So it's like this low grade fever that the Middle East has to suffer for years and years without like a resolution point. And so at a certain point, things are going to boil over, and then a new equilibrium is going to be reached. That's not, we are not like celebrating that. We don't enjoy that fact. We are trying to describe like what is. I think you and I are definitely coming from a place where like, we don't enjoy the use of force, but like that is a mechanism that humans use to resolve situations. So we have to look at it with clear eyes and kind of examine it and then understand the costs and repercussions of it.
That's it. It's going to happen. It's going to happen at some point. There's no way that I see that you can avoid some eventual conflict between Israel and Iran's allies in the region. And so, like, what do you do with it? Now, as America, it gets us into the next question of like, well, what is America's position on it? I don't know. My general stance is like, I don't want a position. It's like being in a non-HOA neighborhood. Like, hey, man, you guys work that shit out. Work it out over there. Now, is Israel an ally? Absolutely, Israel is an ally. Do I support Israel more than I support Iran? 100% I do. But at the same time, I, I think America's tendency to get so involved into things that we actually remove the ability of the parties to resolve them themselves to any kind of workable solution is super common. Like, we tend to like come in there so heavy-handed that to our parenting analogies that we always use, the kids can never sort it out. We're like, we always step in, we're always take care of it. The kids are still mad at each other. They never really resolve the issue. So we're going to get out in there and we're just going to make sure that it never gets resolved. And I don't know, man. I'm not going to sit here in this podcast and say that I know what America's position should be in that particular conflict. Do we support it all the way? Do we kind of passively support? Do we just not worry about it and let Israel do its thing, let this play out? Do we tamp it all down? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. But I do think that war is going to happen. It's going to happen. And so, like, well, how are we going to deal with it?
Yes, and then it's situated within the large conflict in Ukraine, which is largely a proxy war for NATO against Russia, and then we've got China conducting increasingly more aggressive maneuvers around the Taiwan Strait and around Taiwan. So it's basically it's within a larger system. So does China look at this and say, like, now's my chance to kind of strike while everybody's distracted?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that gets back to the earlier professional malcontent discussion. Like, is all of this actually being kind of driven and fomented in order to achieve some larger geopolitical end? And at that point, you get into such nebulous terrain that you're like, I'm not sure. I'm inclined to say yes. I'm inclined to think that a lot of this is kind of going, in accordance with, let's say China's plan. But that doesn't mean it's true. And I don't really have a lot of data to, back that up. It just seems like a pretty reasonable play. And you're like, well, it seems like it's working out pretty well in their favor. And if it's working out really well in their favor, that's probably not accident. Like, because why would it be? But again, we could go round and round on this. Man, we waited till too late in the show to bring up the entirety of the Israel-Iran conflict. Like, we're going to talk about that guy, man. That's going to take a full hour itself.
Well, yeah. And it's definitely like it'll, by next week, definitely things will have changed. We'll have a better picture of exactly what we're looking at here. But I think from Israel's perspective, they just, I think October 7th was a huge transition point. So whether, and by the way, before that, they were having huge, problems with the government overreaching, and kind of like trying to curtail the judiciary. So now they're kind of in a situation where they have a super right-wing government that everyone doesn't necessarily agree with, but they have to be supporting the government because they're making decisions to protect the state of Israel. Which, like, when you look at Israelis, like, throughout their history, it has been manifestly demonstrated to them that no one is going to look out for them like themselves. So, like, the lesson of history is like, no one's going to look out for Jews, like, except for Jews. Like, so to me, like, Israel is just making decisions based on their own self-interest. And then we're going to have to grapple with, what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. It's funny you talk about, the wartime government thing, but I mean, how long did Winston Churchill stay in power after World War II? Not very long.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he came back getting a little later as kind of a, curtain call, but no, man, they elected him out pretty quick. But people like that stuff when the war's cooking, right? They want somebody who's going to defend the homeland. Anyway, but yeah, man, a lot to talk about there. But we're gonna have to postpone it another week, my friend, because we are
all right.
Just about at the time. We got to all do our things for the day and get to work and whatnot. It's a good talk. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. Although once again, we did not get to episode 0. We had this goal.
I don't need to talk about myself. I really don't.
I disagree.
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of talking about myself.
We know you're a student of Middle Eastern Studies. We know so much about you, Adam. We just got to get there. We can get to episode 0. Everybody wants to know where Wolverine came from. All right? Nobody just wants to think he's just like this dude in the Canadian wilderness. No, we got to know the story, and we're going to get there.
Yeah. Civil War.
We're going to get there.
Okay.
Anyway, I hope you have a good week, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Wait, sorry, real quick, real
Oh,
quick. I need to.
yeah, yeah.
I got a comment. I got a comment on your shirt. Love it. As you can see, 20-sided die right behind me.
There it is. This is
So yeah,
Grandma's Boy Fabulous right here. This is Grandma's
I
Boy
love it. I
Fabulous, like a
love
true
the shirt.
classic in the fucking
Yes.
Sandler series of productions. But
All
I
right.
love that movie. I'll talk to you soon, man.
Yes. All right, brother. See you.